Welcome back. It's Creative Katie, Karen Virtual here. Today we're doing an art journal tutorial. We will be using Inktense blocks, a couple stencils, modeling paste, and some pouring medium. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and select the option of being notified immediately when I upload a new video. So this surface is gessoed, and I've been really struggling after the ICAD challenge. I think I was a little bit burnt out, and anytime I went into the studio it just didn't seem to roll very well. I wasn't very productive. So today I decided I just want to get in here and have fun, use some tried and true things, and just go to town. So I've picked 3 colors of Inktense blocks: a teal, a fuchsia, and a blue. And don't worry so much about the exact color that I used. If you have Inktense blocks, you can use any shade in there. What we're doing is picking colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. This is a tried and true color combo that I particularly like. If you want to use a different color combination, go for it. I'm just showing you here that the water is in a container that had eyeglass cleaner in it, and I find the spray of this to be just perfect for my mixed media purposes. And the size really goes well if you want to pack and go for a create date or something like that. So I'm just activating with water and my finger, and I'm not too worried about any marks there. I want to get some blending in between the colors. In a minute I'm going to put it on an edge and get some dripping going on. And you can omit that step if that's not something that you personally like. This is simply the first layer of many layers. Now I said this was a gessoed surface, and that's really important to do the technique that we're going to be doing next. Now I'm drying this, but I'm not going to be drying this all the way, because in a minute I'm going to be putting on a Crafter's Workshop stencil on top of this and removing some of the color through the stencil with a baby wipe. Because these are Inktense blocks, they do dry permanent, so they're less likely to give up the color, be able to be lifted. If you're using another water-soluble medium such as distress crayons or gelatos, you'll be able to do this quite easily, but it's really important that the background or the page is gessoed so that you can do that. It'll even work with acrylic paint, and I will put a link to my technique tag video where I show using this technique using a variety of color mediums, because you do not have to go out and buy specialized products to get this effect. You can get it with even the simplest of materials, craft acrylic paints. So I'm loving the look of this. It's just the second layer. So the first layer was the color. Now we have the stencil, the pattern, the little bit of pattern here that's broken. Now I'm giving this a more complete dry. Looking on the side, you can see that I've taped off where the coils are. This keeps the gunk from getting into the coils. It also gives me a nice clean edge that if I choose to, I can take this out of this book and frame it. I also don't do anything on the other side. Now the iCAD I just showed you, I really like the effect I had of putting that little tag in the middle. So I wanted to do this on a bigger page. And while I had that idea, I looked in my room and I had this frame there, and it was exact size that I need. So I'm just going to use it as a tracer. So right now I am creating a mask, because there is at least one step that that's coming up that I do not want for the whole page, and that the middle part where the frame is going to go will be masked off, and I won't be doing that. So I'm just trying to get that centered a little bit there, and then before I glue it down or tape it down, in place, I realized that no, I want to do this step with the whole page. So I dug out my favorite script stamp, but you could use a dot stamp like that, or a music stamp, or some other fine stamp. And I'm going to be applying black acrylic paint with a makeup sponge on this stamp and applying it to the entire background page. So this will be the third layer of interest. So if there's places that it doesn't get a perfect print, you can leave it and go with that, or you can just touch it up and apply it. Some will be darker, some are lighter, and I like that. That just adds to the overall interest. I'm also kind of moving the stamp from one side to the other, not necessarily always starting at the one end, so you don't end up with any ridges or any kind of pattern so that's too showing. I'm just touching up any areas that may have been missed with the corner of the stamp. This script stamp was on a wooden block, and I took it off the wooden block so it could be flexible so I could use it for this purposes. And it is my #1 favorite stamp. So if you're just starting out, I highly recommend getting a script stamp. And I'll put a link to either this one or a similar script stamp that you can find in Amazon. Always clean your stamps if you've used acrylic paint on them. And I find using a stencil brush and a spray of Murphy's oil soap really works well to get that done. I just want to make sure that this is all set and dried. I don't want any smudging to happen. And I'm absolutely loving the background here. So now I'm going to put the mask on, and you can eyeball it if you wish, or you can measure. Depends if it matters to you. Most times I eyeball it, but this time I did from side to side want to get it straight, and it's still, you know, in the end I think I just ended up eyeballing it. So what I'm doing here is I took my flexible modeling paste and put some on my craft mat, and I mixed in some black acrylic paint. When I've done this similar on an ATC, which is the inspiration for this one, I actually ended up painting the white modeling paste black. And I thought, you know what, if I can skip a step, or even if I don't have to apply so many coats. Now I took off the black or the tape so that this could lie flat, so that it was a little bit easier for me to get the modeling paste through the stencil. There's quite a bit of, I'm going to be applying quite a bit of this, and I really wanted to get the best possible outcome. So I'm taping it down, making it lie flat. Now, because I'm applying such a large amount, I've opted to use a credit card or a room key to apply the modeling paste through the stencil instead of my palette knife. If I was just doing a small area, I tend to use my palette knife, but I have more success on larger areas with the credit card. So if that's something you struggle with, try the credit card. And I'm tilting the credit card. This stencil is a great stencil. It's from Joggles. It's called Amoeba, but it has lots of little parts. So, you know, I want to minimize the amount that runs under the stencil. So I'm going little by little. And because I mixed it with black acrylic paint, it dried really black, so I won't have to paint it at all. And I decided to put it over top of the mask because I will be able to use that to create some embellishments or something later on. So now comes the cleanup, and after taking this off, I did take the stencil right to the sink and I just ran water over it, and it came off really, really easy. You absolutely need to take your modeling paste off the stencil ASAP. That's not something you can wait on. So I'm just getting some of the excess here before I throw it into the sink onto a piece of paper. And again, I may use this piece of paper on some future part of. There's some interesting. So I'm drying it a little bit, and then I decide to set this aside and work on the black frame that is going to frame that center portion and where I will be putting my focal point. So I grab this black paper that I'm repurposing. It was in the scrapbook binder that I repurposed for my 6x6 stencils, and I'm just using the frame, and I'm just tracing the inside and the outside and using this as a template. But you can make your frame as large or as small as you see fit to look good on your whatever size page you are working on. Then I'm just using the X-Acto knife on the cutting board, just cutting that center piece. And if you're having problems cutting, maybe it's because your blade is dull. I know I have two X-Acto knives. One's blade is quite dull and the other is sharp, so you just need to address that. So because this was dull, I was just having to go back and recut some parts of it. So the outside, I'm just going to cut along that line. And voila, we have a frame. So now I'm going to go search through my files and my stash and see what I can come up with for a focal point. So what I'm using is pouring medium, and pouring medium is high gloss, and initially I bought this by accident, and I discovered that it's high gloss, and I use it to accentuate certain things. Now what I'm doing, I'm going to place it. I wasn't going to put it in the middle, that's why you saw the mask over top, and then I decided I'm going to put it on the whole thing. And you put this on, and they say it's not self-leveling, and I'm just pushing it around. I want a good amount. Now the Inktense blocks here, this had dried overnight. They are not reactivating because they are said to be permanent once they are dry, and that was definitely the case here. If you've used any watercolor, it may reactivate and you may affect your lovely background. So that's where, if you've done this with acrylic paint or Inktense blocks or India ink, it will be permanent. So if not, take a chance, test out your product on a piece of paper before you apply it to the whole background. And you can see the gloss that's there. And when this dries, that gloss stays there. It gives a really interesting effect, and it turns the whole page into kind of like plastic. So I had two options of flowers, and I really liked the tulip, the color of the tulip, that one, and this one was just a little too light for me. So I thought, you know what, maybe I can adjust this. So I dug out my Faber-Castell Pitt brush pens. Now these are something that I purchased with with the money that I receive from my Amazon store. So when you go to my Amazon store and you buy anything through any link there, whether it's something I've directly linked or something else, I do get a percentage back. And my pledge to you was that I would buy new products and then do videos with them. So here's me exploring these Pitt brush pens. And it is India ink, so they are permanent. That is the advantage over doing this with Inktense blocks or watercolor crayons or distress crayons. And I've done that in the past with them. So, definitely a learning curve. And when it's permanent when dry, but after you place it, you do have a few minutes to move it around if you're putting it on a non-porous surface. Now, these flowers were cut out from a calendar, and it's shiny, glossy paper, so it is non-porous. So you saw me put some on the craft mat and water it down and paint some more. Now I'm going directly. I'm just exploring. This is, within the first few times that I've pulled these out. Love, love, love this magenta color. And I'm just playing till I get an effect that I like. And if you go back a few screens and see where it was, you can definitely see that, I've darkened that color quite significantly. And it's very easy to move, and you do not need, I was very shocked to find out how little ink you need to put on there to get an effect. So then I did let this sit and dry, and you can see the gloss. It's very wet and it soaks through the paper, so it needs a long time to dry. Here's another way that I've discovered using the Pitt brush pens, and I am just touching the damp brush to the tip and brushing it on with the brush. And I really like that effect, and you can see how much darker I have been able to get these flowers. And you can see again the shine that is on this page. It gives a very interesting effect. So I'm just gluing down my frame into the middle. And even like this, without any focal point, I think it would have been quite nice and kind of interesting. Could have just put a quote in the middle, and I think that would have been lovely. And had I thought of it before doing this voiceover, I may have done that. So I decided I'm going to use the Pitt brush pen just to darken the edges a little bit. I just want them, as usual, to be shaded. And literally I'm putting dots of India ink. These pens are very filled with ink, and it flows really nicely. I'm really impressed. It was something that I've wanted for a very long time, but would never have bought without the Amazon store, because I could never warrant the cost of them. But they are quality. So now I have to find ways to maximize their use and the investment that I have. But as always, I will tell you, you could be doing the same thing here with your watercolor crayons, with your Inktense blocks and gel medium, with your Stabilo all pencil or your charcoal pencil to get this darkened effect. So there are other ways of doing it. I don't want you to feel that you need to rush out and get these Pitt brush markers unless that's something that you really want to do. So link to the pouring medium and the brush markers are going to be in the description box. And I thank you if you do any shopping through my Amazon links. So I've glued down the flower now that I'm quite happy with it, and just edging it with the Pitt brush marker. If you don't have that, right, you can use Stabilo, Inktense block, gelato, lots of things. But the Pitt brush marker has no problem covering on top of the pouring medium or anything else. I'm just using a ruler to darken the edges here. and adding a little bit more shading and detailing. Like I said, I'm playing with this new product and, you know, putting it through its paces and getting used to it, because everyone is just that little bit of different. I think this would be a nice effect to use on a canvas, using the pouring medium the way I have on this one. I hope you give it a try. You now enjoy some close-ups of the finished page. I just wish that you could feel how this page feels. It's almost been plasticized, if that's a word. And just close-ups of the shine and the layers below. There are lots of layers in this group. Inspiration for this came from an ATC that I did using this same technique. And I've always, ever since making that ATC, thought that I'm going to do a whole page or a canvas. So that's one of the joys of making ATCs. You come up with lots of ideas, and then you can take them and make them on a larger scale. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.